Welcome to a University of Missouri podcast. We are joined this week by Esther Thorson, Associate Dean of Graduate Studies in the Missouri School of Journalism, and Cindy Pemberton, Vice Provost of Academic Affairs at the University of Missouri-Kansas City, both of whom are co-chairing the Presidential Outside In Task Force. Esther, Cindy, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks
nice
very
to
much.
be here.
As I understand it, the Outside In Task Force is a strategic initiative by System President Gary Forsey to ensure that post-secondary graduates are not only prepared for the world of work, but then those graduates are meeting the needs of today's employers. So tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing.
The job is really to figure out the future of Missouri's economic situation, essentially with the university at the table when that figuring out is occurring. So not only are you identifying jobs, you are creating jobs.
Cindy, anything to add?
I think it is important to indicate that as institutions of higher education, we've always been involved in preparing our graduates to be contributors to greater society. But I think we're in a very dynamic and changing environment. The kinds of skills and knowledge and experience for today's workforce are going to be changing in the very near future. And being at the table as decisions are made is really what the goal of this particular task force is to try to address and to strategize about.
We know about trends in public higher education, especially in math and science curricula, but we also know that the landscape in the U.S. is changing from largely a manufacturing or industrial environment to what some are saying now is more entrepreneurial. So the timing of this task force is definitely fortuitous. It's definitely the right time to be taking a look at these issues.
Part of the job of this task force has been to explore what other universities are doing. We found two really good examples, North Carolina and Wisconsin. The university has really stepped up to the plate in looking at these innovations and thinking about redefinitions of its role and its relationship to industry, government, nonprofits to really maximize the knowledge flow from the university, from its students, administrators, and its faculty out into the economic environment.
Even though we're talking about the university's relationship to our state and our near region, the impacts that are going on around the world come back to hit us here at home. We also need to have a lens to the wider issues and how that's going to impact our students and how we need to prepare them to be able to function in a greater, wider world in terms of business, economic development, and technology.
One of the things that I appreciate about this task force is that it positions the university for the first time that I know of to really think beyond what was traditionally what some consider the end of its duty, and that was to graduate students and to provide them a diploma. Do you think this will be a growing trend in public higher education?
Well, I think it really needs to be. One of the things that we've discovered as part of this task force research is that there are incredibly wonderful things going on at the four campuses. And there is a lot of linkage with state government, with industry, with post-secondary education. But there could be so much more. More effective communication, more extensive technology transfer, research partnership. The opportunities, I think, for growth in this area are excellent because, number one, we've got some best practices to look at. And number two, we've got a lot of really healthy things going on in this direction.
I think it's also a matter of, as an institution, finding ways to support those best practices that are already ongoing. Many instances, those are best practices and initiatives that have been taken on by individuals who reach out to the community, who make those connections. We need to make sure, as a university system, that we're supporting those efforts and encouraging that work.
So tell me a little bit about the process then for your committee. Tell me a little bit about what the scope then of your committee is going to be.
It's been a pretty broad scope so far. We have super representatives from all four campuses, and our first job was really to look to all the movers and shakers, to administrators, to faculty members, to deans, and ask them what are really good examples of what we have going on in this area, things that could be grown and could be linked. At the same time, we looked abroad to see what other universities were doing, identifying best practices. So now what we're really doing is trying to say, well, if we wanted to create a system that would synergize the effectiveness of this linkage between the university and stakeholders in the state, what would that structure look like? And we're struggling with that. Because these four campuses, they're big, they're complex, they're located in different parts of the state, they have different focuses for their specialties. I think there's a consensus on the part of the task force that somehow there has to be a bringing together of this force and this energy, and the structure for doing that is not yet clear to us, and that's what we're working on.
Are there any models that are out there that have already been developed?
There's a wonderful report that talks about the top 10 universities in the area of economic development, of workforce development. Something that really stands out for me in looking at the case histories of these places is that they use the energy from a high level of coordination and cooperation among their campuses. That seems to be absolutely key. You can't do it by yourself, and you can't do it by competing with the other campuses. We're all in the same boat together. Trying to make that happen and figure out what that can look like here is a challenge, but I think it's really an interesting and important one.
I know that you're early on in some of your research. I'm curious if there's any results that have been yielded to date in terms of gaps, perhaps, that employers are finding in new recruits to their organizations. Are we talking about things like communication skills? Are we talking about more gaps in curriculum? Are we talking about work ethic? What's the scope?
Well, that's a really good question. The scope is from the basic communication skills right on up to being a specialist in some sort of area, doing creative entrepreneurial problem solving. It's really at all levels. I hasten to say the campuses themselves are doing a terrific job. Some of the ideas that come from the faculty and students on the campuses are absolutely terrific. But I think that a big problem is lack of communication among the systems that are doing this. There's a lot of data out there. There are a lot of really good state organizations, elementary and secondary education, the Department of Economic Development, community colleges, the universities, and state government. Everybody's working kind of in the same direction, and I think all these units really understand their role in this complex process, but there needs to be more effective communication among those players, clearly.
Cindy?
There are national data that are available that talk about what employers in general value in terms of graduates of institutions of higher education, everything from basic communication, critical thinking skills to the more technical aspects. And most of our academic units that are professionally accredited are charged by those accrediting groups with ensuring that they're keeping in close contact with practitioners in the field to ensure that their students are well prepared to enter those professional fields. However, there are a large number of academic units also that don't have particular professional accrediting organization. And so we want to make sure that those best practices that have been tried are expanded throughout the institution so people understand what kinds of processes there are and how to go about that. And so being able to identify a best practices kind of window to share across our campuses and across academic units, I think, could be helpful.
Speaking of best practices, I understand one group has gotten it right for quite some time, and that's community colleges. They've been able to tailor their courses to really meet the demands of work in a practical way, it seems. Any idea about what their secret to success has been?
Terry Barnes is on our committee, and he has been a terrific liaison between the Columbia campus and the community colleges, and we've really learned a lot from him. I think there's really two secrets to their success. First of all, they can act very quickly. A need comes up, and bam, they're on it. They can do non-credit training and courses, so they're very fast on their feet, and they're very well tuned in to what's going on statewide in terms of workforce needs. Second, they're very, very good at providing specialized training, whereas the university structure, we have this huge intellectual tradition, and so we're not nimble in that same way. I don't think the university campuses need to be doing the same thing, but I think that we could certainly coordinate with that activity in some ways that would be very exciting and interesting and useful for economic development in the state.
So finally, I understand the task force, as with all the presidential task force, are operating on pretty quick timelines, and some initial reports are due early to mid-fall. Is that still the plan?
Unfortunately, that is. Yeah, but I will say proudly that our committee has just been meeting like crazy all summer, and we have a fantastic committee membership, and they all really did their homework very, very well. So we have collected a ton of information. We had a real interesting session where we really are starting to pull things together. So yes, it's a short timeline. Yes, I think we're going to be able to meet it.
Perhaps this is just phase one, and we could check in with you about other charges or different routes that you're going to take as this moves along.
Absolutely. We would love to talk about it again, because I think over the next 2 to 3 months, we're really going to start to be able to run these ideas by a lot of people and say, this might work, that might work, let's try this.
Cindy, anything to add, or other questions or topics you think we should cover?
The whole issue about raising the profile of the university to be at the forefront of decision-making about future economic development opportunities and workforce development issues is another real concern and charge for us. That's an interesting challenge, but I think that we have people at the table, both within the university as well as outside the university, who are anxious for that to happen. And so hopefully our task force will be able to put some ideas out there and some challenges for us to be able to move forward in that direction.
Well said, Cindy. The only thing I would add is that the name of our task force is Outside In, which for a long time, we'd never get it straight. We couldn't remember if it was inside out or outside in, And now, we're all saying it should be both, outside in and inside out, because it's that flow of communication between the campuses and the other players in the state that is absolutely so critical.
Thank you, Esther and Cindy, for taking time with us today during a University of Missouri podcast. And thank you to our audience for listening. If you have questions for Esther or Cindy or suggestions for an upcoming podcast, please visit our podcast webpage, available from the UM System homepage at www.umsystem.edu. And join us next week for another topic and another guest.